What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Baseball Development Hub podcast. My name is Trevor Powers, and I am joined by nobody today. We are going to ride solo here today. We have a ton of fun episodes planned over the next few weeks. We have a ton of fun plans that we are going to continue to roll out on both channels. But for the podcast for this week, you got me riding solo here, where I'm going to talk about a topic that's very important to me because it's something that resonated with me in sports psychology and making sure that players and coaches understand the value of sports psychology and why it's such a prevalent part in baseball. Before that, make sure if you're listening here, this is your first time coming across the channel, you kind of like what you see, you like what you're hearing, make sure you smash that subscribe button. It really helps us on both the Baseball Development Hub channel as well as the Backside Ground Balls Media channel, where obviously we do our in-person, the unofficial visit, where we travel to college campuses, discuss player development with baseball coaches, highlight their facilities, and everything that they have going on. So make sure you head over to the Backside Ground Balls Media YouTube channel, as well as the Baseball Development Hub channel, which is where the podcast lives and segments live. So make sure you smash that subscribe button because it helps us continue to do what we are doing. So with that being said, sports psychology, for those that do not know, is something that's very important to me. When I decided to go into coaching, I ended up choosing to go get my master's degree in sports psychology. The reason why was because I felt like as a baseball coach, specifically as a hitting coach, I was going to be spending days on days on days being a practicing sports psychologist. The reason why is when you're working with athletes, you might as well be as well versed as anybody who does it in a clinical setting. So it was something that resonated with me as being a coach, as wanting to be a sports psychologist, to understand the sports psych side of player development and baseball specifically, and being able to take my experiences as a player, something that I really, really struggled with as a player, and be able to convey the proper messages to our athletes and to the players that worked around me. So it was something that I really thought was going to be valuable to my coaching career. And then obviously, as many who know who have followed the channel for a long extended period of time, my coaching career was short lived. So my experiences in sports psychology goes beyond just the coaching side of it. I also do some mental skills trainings with some athletes, and that has given me the opportunity to kind of understand fully what every athlete is dealing with in terms of their own successes and failures, especially in a sport like baseball, right? You've heard it so many times, the age old adage that baseball is 90% mental and the other half is physical, right? And I think that it's something that we understand in our baseball society more and more each and every day, but it's harder and harder to put it into practice. So if you're somebody who, whether you're a high school coach, college coach, facility owner, or whatever it is, and you want to start to implement more sports psychology into your day-to-day mental skills training, whatever you want to call it, to make sure that you're not bringing the voodoo that is psychology in a sport. um, this is kind of what I want that to be, is giving an overarching theme to why it's important in a sport like baseball, and why it's important for coaches and players alike to understand the core principles of sports psychology. So with that, sports psychology obviously gets a bad rap. I don't want to say as much as it used to, but a lot of people think when you go and see a sports psychologist that you're broken, right? And I think that's the main thing that coaches and players and parents and anybody who might be listening to this right now need to understand that just because you're going to see a sports psychologist doesn't mean that you're broken, right? Sports psychologists can not only help you get through injury or the anxieties of performance or any of those things that so many people see on the label of what sports psychology is, but it can also help with goal setting. It can help with confidence. It can help with not getting too high and not getting too low, to get yourself out of some slumps and any of the inevitables that comes with a sport like baseball. So many people think that sports psychology is a fixer, mental skills is a fixer of your problems, but it's also a preventer of your problems. And if you have as an athlete, ever struggle, which as baseball players, you should struggle. You will struggle at some point in your career. If you're a superstar right now and you never feel like you struggle, trust me, there is going to be a time and place where you are going to hit a rut in this sport when competition gets level. And it's a preventer of those obstacles that you're going to face, and giving you the tools to handle those the best way possible. All right. And that's ultimately what sports psychology is, and why we need to have a bigger conversation about how to utilize it in our day to day, because it's not just a fixer of anxiety. This player has the yips, send him to a sports psychologist. Yes, do they work with that? And yes, is there a large subset of performance anxiety that comes from a sport like baseball, and sports psychologists and mental skills help through those? 100%. But the reality is that we can also help in terms of off-season development, in season, not riding the roller coaster, summer development, making sure we're handling lack of playing time, understanding our role with the team, and everything that kind of comes from being a part of a baseball team, being a baseball player, handling the failures and those types of obstacles that come up on a day-to-day basis for baseball players and coaches alike. So why do I keep saying that coaches and players need to understand what sports psychology and mental skills is? Well, the reality is that if you don't understand it, there's going to be a crossroads that you're going to hit at some point in your career, or you're going to have an athlete that's going to hit this crossroads as a coach, where you're going to really won't wish you understood how to handle this properly, to not go off the ledge, to not handle the emotions of the moment as an athlete when you inevitably go 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts, when the umpire makes a bad call, when coach isn't playing you even though you've done everything right, when you're injured and you have to push through a weekend and still be a good teammate, and all of those obstacles that come through the course of a season, right? So it's very important for people to understand that just because you might not be as well versed as somebody with a graduate level education, just because you might not be certified as a mental performance coach, or just because you don't dedicate your life to evaluating reading and doing research on the mental habits of elite athletes, if you're an athlete or if you're a leader of athletes, it's very important for you to understand, at the very least, the core of what sports psychology is and why it can help a baseball player on a day-to-day basis, even the ones that on the surface look tough as nails, handle every adversity that you throw at them, handle every, you know, butt chewing, every high, every low, all of those things that maybe as a coach you're like, man, this dude's tough as nails, but he might need a little bit of this or that, or a little bit of help in this department. And being well versed in what each athlete needs is very important. So with that on the coaching side, I think it's really important to understand that each athlete is different, right? Even if a kid on the surface looks tough, he handles it when you're hard on him, when you coach him hard. He's one of those guys who came up playing for coaches that coached him hard. He's a disciplined guy who shows up on time with the cleats on, ready to roll, leader, right? Leader of the pack. He's a guy who's always at the front of the line, always paying attention, making eye contact with you when you're addressing the team. It doesn't mean he's perfect, right? That doesn't mean he's wholly confident in his abilities. And that athlete might just need a little bit of TLC occasionally to know, like, hey, because a lot of times those athletes, to be quite honest with you, are seeking the approval, right? So guys that have had that hard coaching growing up, that have had parents that have held them accountable to a level of being on time and being ready, and making sure that you're attentive in a team setting, those guys are looking for approval, right? So those are almost the guys that coaches sometimes neglect when they're trying to handle the balances of communication and making sure that we give that athlete what he needs, right, in those moments. And ultimately, that player, a lot of times, they're doing those things not as a cry for help. I don't want it to come off as that way, but because they're trying to do the right thing. And a lot of times, a little reassurance here and there really goes a long way. And that's the reality of this conversation, is the fact of the matter that even the athletes that seem like they're the most quote unquote low maintenance, right, the ones that do everything right, sometimes those are the guys that we as coaches ignore because we think they don't need our reassurance. We think they don't need us to have a conversation and check in on them. But a lot of times that athlete could see the most benefit from being checked in on, right? From being able to pull that athlete aside and be like, hey man, I see that you're doing everything we ask you to do. And I know the hits aren't coming now, or I know the innings and opportunities aren't coming now, but they're going to come eventually. Whether you're a young guy who is going to grow into an opportunity, whether you're a depth piece who is going to be forced into a starting position when somebody inevitably gets hurt, or anything in between, right? Or superstar, right? He could be your best player, three-hole hitter, ace Friday night starter, giving you that and still might need, like, hey man, like, keep doing what you're doing, right? It might not be going as well as you want. I know you want to be doing X, Y, and Z. I know you want to be conference pitcher of the year, all of those conversations. But hey, man, we see it, right? We see the work. We believe in you. We're here to support you. And again, that's the big thing from the coaching side, is those small little conversations, little in the grand scheme of your day. You know, somebody, you're biting off practice plans, you're having meetings with staff members and making sure everybody's on the same page before you roll out to practice. You're bringing the team together as a group, and all of those different moments throughout your day, and just a conversation with one player on your team, probably in and out of your brain quicker than you can even say hello, right? But the reality is, for that athlete, especially one that's attentive and cares about doing the right things, and being a good teammate and being a part of the group and being a part of the team, goes a long way. It resonates with them, and you're just going to get them to be even more motivated than they already were. And again, that's the ultimate goal, is to get 35 to 40 guys all motivated with the same collective goal, pulling on the same side of the rope, and making sure that we're not fighting against each other. The other athletes that are obviously more self-explanatory in terms of touching base and being able to understand their needs, and being that, as I like to say, chameleon, right? Being adaptable to your environment, to what each athlete needs. Leadership in baseball, and like any team sport, football has 105 athletes compared to baseball's 35 to 40, and everything in between for sports that, go as low as 10. Being a leader in any sports setting as a coach, you have to be able to adapt to each individual's environment. Coach Torsani and I, a couple weeks ago when we hopped on this podcast, talked about, feeling like in the past athletes had to adjust to us, right? And what happens a lot of times is, when athletes feel like they have to adjust to us, we lose athletes that could be very successful, because they might not jive. They might not fit with your personality, your coaching style, how you go about the day to day basis, right? And the best lesson that I've heard in recent years is, you need to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. And what is that, right? Well, a thermometer reacts to the environment around them, right? So when we stick a thermometer in a room, it tells you what the temperature is. As a leader, you need to be a thermostat, because you need to set the temperature. And that breaks down to every individual relationship that you might have. If a kid's sitting across from you and he's not a guy that responds well to screaming, hollering, yelling, and letting them know exactly bluntly how everything is, maybe you don't need to do that to that athlete, right? Maybe you need to say, hey man, what do you need from me, right? What are you feeling I'm not doing for you? How am I going about how can I go about my business? Hey coach, maybe I just don't need to be yelled at when I mess up, right? I'm really hard on myself, and I know you don't even know that, because you got 35 other guys to worry about. But the reality is when I strike out with a runner on third, less than 2 outs, the last thing I need is you jumping down my throat, because that just makes me want to shut down and sit in the dugout and not play the rest of the day. And I mean, you might be listening to that response and say, this kid's soft. He's never going to make it in this program. Well, this podcast probably ain't for you. You made it 15 minutes in and you're trying to learn something, and that's your reaction when I say an athlete reacts that way to jumping down their throat and telling them bluntly how it is, then probably need to find another podcast and another group of people, because that's exactly how leaders lead, right? That's how decision makers that we respect handle those situations, right? They make sure that those guys understand that mistakes happen, right? Especially in college, right? High school and the youth route, sometimes you do need to educate these athletes on the mistakes they make, because sometimes they really just genuinely don't know, right? Like, they don't know. I didn't understand situational hitting till 17 years old, it felt like, right? Well, runner on second, less than two strikes, bear down. dig your feet in and hit a ground ball to second base because you're going to help your team win by moving that runner. I'm selfish, right? Until that point, because our environment is about getting hits. It ain't helping your team win all the time. Our stats on Game Changer, they only calculate our hits. They don't calculate our quabs or our situational hitting percentage or any of those factors that come into play, right? So our environment doesn't always have the educational parameters for kids to understand that they messed up. But when you get into college baseball, the reality is most of these kids know with a runner on third, less than 2 outs, I can't strike out. So when I strike out, everybody in the ball yard knows. All 34 of my teammates know. Every parent and friend and girlfriend and significant other in the stands know. Every coach on staff knows. You jumping down that kid's throat in that moment, I mean, if he doesn't know, you probably haven't educated him well enough. But the reality is that that's not productive for anybody. So a lot of times that when you think about that coach player relationship, right? Every guy is going to need something different. Every guy, some guys are motivated by screaming, yelling, drill sergeant style in their face, making sure you understand that, you convey your message in that way because that's an environment they thrive in. I'm not somebody that, as a former athlete, that I enjoyed that per se, but I responded to it. I never turtled in those moments. I was somebody that I wanted to step up and prove you wrong in the fact of the matter that, like, you don't believe in me. Okay, well, let's go out there and let's show you. But not everybody responds to that. And so many times, coaches, when we go back to being that chameleon and being adaptable and being the thermostat, not the thermometer in your relationships with every athlete, so many times coaches forget that not every player responds to even their personality the way they think they should, or the way they convey the message. So I think it's really important for coaches to really bear down and understand on what every athlete's needs are. And again, it is trial and error. You're going to have conversations with an athlete and you're going to think he's going to respond one way, and you're going to act accordingly, and he's going to respond a different way. And in that moment, you got to take that as a mental note and say, okay, I thought he could handle that and he couldn't, or I thought he would respond to that and he didn't. And I obviously need to escalate the intensity of how I have this conversation, or I need to de escalate the intensity of how I have this conversation and make sure they understand what I'm trying to say and how I'm trying to say it. So when we talk about all of these things, and at this point, we're obviously a little bit into the coaches conversation. You might be thinking, well, that's just leadership. And that goes back to my first part about mental skills and sports psychology and the importance of understanding the core philosophies of sports psychology, is because leadership is sports psychology. Relationship building is mental skills. Goal setting, right? Helping these guys achieve their goals and making sure that they're in a position to succeed. That's mental skills. That's sports psychology, because it's a two-way street, right? How you convey your message impacts that athlete's mental well-being in terms of how they view themselves in the space and how they view themselves in the eyes of the coaching staff, and all of those situations that come into play. So as a coach, you might be thinking, well, you're just telling me leadership lessons. Well, darn right, because mental skills and the response to those situations are all tied to leadership, core philosophies of leadership, and how we handle relationships and how we handle personalities, and everything that comes into being a leader of 35 guys or 20 guys or 45 guys, however many players you have on your roster, right? Those at the end of the day are plain and simple leadership lessons that impact mental skills of the people around you and mental well-being and their ability to be prepared and ready, right, for the moment, and making sure that they're in a position to succeed. So ultimately, as a coach, again, it ties back to our leadership philosophies, our understanding of how to handle relationships, our understanding of the ability to communicate and the ability to build a relationship, to make sure it's not a one-way relationship where the athlete needs to respond to you. It's a two-way relationship where you need to respond to the athlete and their needs, and making sure there's a balance, right? Not letting the athlete walk all over you, and making sure they understand that there is a relationship side to, like, these decisions and those kind of factors. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think being able to completely understand that athletes' needs are determined by so many factors, and your ability to interpret those factors and continue to build a relationship is very important. So if there's any sports psychology lesson, mental skills lesson, again, it's tied into leadership. Is just be that chameleon, right? Understand what athletes need from a mental standpoint, because that's what we're going to talk a little bit now is obviously if you're a player or you are a coach who wants to understand what players need, a parent who wants to make sure you convey the message. The big thing is why players need mental skills, right? Why sports psychology in this industry is so prevalent and important in baseball. It's ultimately comes down to what the players need, and being able to understand that as a leader, as a parent, and as a player, as an individual is super important. So when we talk about being a player and an athlete and the mental skills required to be successful as an athlete in any sport, quite frankly, but specifically baseball, it's the understanding that failure is inevitable. Inevitable. You will hear so many people talk about, you know, succeed 3 out of 10 times and you're a Hall of Famer and all of those cliches. And the reality is that is wholeheartedly true in a sport like baseball. And but I also have always believed that that neglects the pitching side, because pitching sometimes is a tougher environment than hitting, right? And as a hitting guy, I don't say that lightly, but the pressure of the moment being a pitcher is just as impactful of the pressure of successes and failures as a hitter. Sure, as a pitcher, do you see a lot more success when you groove it over the middle of the plate and the hitter then has to put the ball in play and hope that it's not hit to a outfielder? Yes, right. The chances of success are a lot harder. But the difference is for a pitcher versus a position player is the fact that the game revolves around you. If you're standing on that dirt hill and you get tied up and you can't move and you're frozen, the game don't move. If you're not throwing strikes, your defense gets no action. Your offense doesn't get back out there and be able to handle the opportunity to score runs and put pressure on your opponent. If you're not doing the basic necessities of what's required as a pitcher, of delivering the baseball on time over the plate and making sure that everybody around you gets to move through this game that is not timed, right? There is no stop, there is no clock on the end of the game. There is no final buzzer. It is 27 outs. And as long as it takes to get it, if it's 6 hours to get 27 outs because pitchers can't throw strikes, it's 6 hours to get 27 outs, right? So the moment of a pitcher is just as impactful as the failure of a hitter. And I would even go as far to say that the ranges of outcomes and the year over year differences between performance for pitchers is way bigger because of just that fact, right? It's so typical to see a pitcher crumble under the moment and never get an opportunity. And so while we sit there and we go, well, that pitcher, maybe ERAs and the successes of failures, right? When we talk about pitchers succeed 7 out of 10 times in baseball is what I'm getting at here, compared to hitters succeeding 3 out of 10 times in baseball. Is there's a pitcher out there who couldn't throw a strike and hasn't pitched since the second week of February. Well, that guy's a bigger failure than the guy who succeeded, 1 out of 10 times or 2 out of 10 times, right? That guy failed to 0 out of 10 times because he went out there, he didn't throw a strike, the game didn't move, and coach got frustrated and yanked from the game. And then because trust is a part of performance, has never trusted him again. And kid never went out there and was able to pitch again. And almost in really sad situations, the kid never plays baseball again because a lot of times that confidence, that not wanting to do it. And honestly, I don't blame them. So being able to understand that happens, right? When you take a step up in competition as a pitcher and you're faced with a new level of skill across the way, right? You could have been the best pitcher in your high school and you could stink. You could lose the zone. You could get the yips. You could do all these things in a year, in a snap of a finger, right? Just one moment on that dirt hill, something doesn't feel right. Next thing you know, that's in your head and it lives rent free in your head nonstop, right? So this is very important to understand that it's not always just about the percentage of failure. It's about the moment of the failure. It's about the feeling of the failure. It's about the level of the failure and how quickly it can come and how it can feel. So for position players and pitchers alike, right? It's very evident how much failure plays a part in baseball itself, right? and being able to make sure that you understand that that failure is inevitable. There's going to be times where even the best big league pitchers rolled out on that mound and could barely get out of the first inning, couldn't get out of the first inning, struggled to throw strike. But that doesn't mean your journey is over. That doesn't define you as an athlete. That doesn't define you as a baseball player. All of those things can make you, can make improvements, can show you what you need to work on, can give you the armor to go out there and do it again and be more ready and be more prepared. But the reality is that so many athletes believe that their stats, their successes and failures, all of those factors are them. They define them. You know, Dan and I always joke that athletes nowadays with access to, excuse me, game changer at a young age and the ability to see your stats, especially once you get to high school and max preps and everybody's all American teams and all state and PBR rankings, and everybody sees your 60 time and everybody sees how hard you throw. And then even to college where everybody's stats are plastered on the website of like just being a part of every time I look up a Division 1 program to see how people are doing. Oh, I know this coach. How are the boys swinging it? Right. Oh, look at this kid, 188. Oh boy, that's been a tough start to the season. I thought he was going to be good. Right. So many people think that that's how everybody in the world views them. That their triple slash line as a hitter is plastered on their forehead. Their point one innings pitched with 4 runs, 4 walks, 0 Ks, 4 hits, and an infinity ERA on the stat line online is plastered on your forehead. You wear it as a necklace around your neck, and the whole world sees it, right? And for athletes, what's so funny, especially younger athletes, is that like they walk into their Chem 101 class as a freshman and they're like, the whole world knows that I'm struggling right now. I started my college career 0 for 20, and the whole class knows. And the teachers chuckling and laughing when we walk into the room. And they were all talking about me before and my struggles before I came into the room. And as somebody who's now detached from that environment and just, you know, goes through his day to day and doesn't have the successes and failures of a baseball player hanging over his shoulder, I laugh at that because it's like that is so outrageous and seemingly so untrue that anybody would feel that way. But the reality is that's how every athlete feels in the moment, right? Especially if you're good enough, right? You're good enough to play college baseball. You were probably the best player in your high school and you thought everybody knew you, right? Like everybody in my high school, it's like Trevor Powers, the hockey player, right? And I always thought I was better at baseball, but because I was in a small state and because just being playing for as many years as I did, everybody thought of me as the hockey player and the baseball player as well. And when those college opportunities didn't come as quickly as I thought they would, I felt like a complete failure. And I felt like everybody in the whole state knew who I was and was laughing at me. The reality is it's not the case, but every athlete believes that because they take pride in their performance. Stats have been accessible since they've been 8 years old, and mom and dad have been taking game changer stats on an iPad. And we haven't even realized as a baseball society how impactful that is to the mental well being of our athletes, right? Because they go home and they're able to feel validation on whether they went 3 for 4 or 0 for 4. And I look back at my career as somebody who really, really struggled with the roller coaster of baseball, right? I genuinely believe that it made me bitter towards baseball. I didn't enjoy playing baseball. I enjoyed watching baseball. By the time my career ended, I enjoyed watching and sitting in the dugout more than I enjoyed playing, which is sad because quite frankly, it's not why we decided to play. I don't even remember the first time I realized we kept stats. I mean, I probably got through 12U. I could never tell you how well I hit 13U, 14U. And that was probably around the time that I started to mentally keep track of I went 1 for 3 today, 2 for 4 yesterday. That means I'm 3 for 7. And if I go 2 for 2 to start this game, I'm going to be hot, right? I'm going to be in a position to succeed. These athletes at much, much younger ages nowadays know that and they seek validation through that and being able to circle the game changer and say, well, I'm hitting 350 and this kid's hitting 250. Why am I hitting sixth? And feeling like that defines your skill as a baseball player and your opportunities as a baseball player. And these kids are exposed to it younger. All right. We had Michael Huber on, who's one of the best people and one of the best mental skills coaches that I've been able to communicate with and be around. And he mentioned the story that I think resonates with a lot of us. When we were in T-ball, it was just hit the ball, right? And now he tied it into a more prevalent of what resonates with athletes now is everybody cheers for just making contact, right? Or if you get to first base and things like that. But Dan always says it's just one of those things where everybody was kind of just like, "Oh, that kid hits the ball. That's pretty good, right?" Remember, mom and dad in Little League was like, "My kid can hit the baseball and coach pitch." It's like that's pretty cool, right? In t-ball and just the mayhem and the fun. Well, at some point we lost that, right? And I'm not saying they're taking stats in t-ball. Would I be surprised if they were? No, but I'm not in that ecosystem and I'm not in that environment, so I don't know for certain if they are. I know they have all-star teams. I know they have travel teams and invite-only travel teams and teams outside of the little league that also ties in your validation off of whether you're a good enough baseball player or not, whether you make that team or whether you don't. And my whole point of going into this little league t-ball keeping stats is we're creating unconfident baseball players. And the reason why I say unconfident is because sure, when you're 11, you're going to make the all-star team if you're athletic. If you're going to play college baseball, if you're going to play high level baseball, quite frankly, if you're going to be a good high school baseball player, you're probably going to be a stud in your little league and t-ball. So you're going to stand out in t-ball and you're going to get the reward of feeling good enough and feeling that validation. The problem is that these kids, when they make it to high school, high level travel, college baseball, have no idea how to handle failure. And it hits a lot of athletes like a brick wall running at 40 miles per hour, a car hitting a brick wall at 40 miles per hour. And because they've never experienced it, they've never understood that you can be validated as a baseball player and not go 3 for 4. There are ways to help your team win, not by hitting doubles and home runs and throwing 3 shutout innings. There are so many different ways in terms of situational quality at bats, being a good teammate. Oh my gosh, did I just say that? That in little league you can be rewarded for being a good teammate, and in college baseball that is part of the reward system of being successful is just by being a good teammate and supporting your teammates and allowing yourself to help your team win in any way, and by picking up pitcher tips, by picking up tendencies, paying attention to how long they till they deliver the plate. Can we steal some bases? Can I pick my guy up and make sure he's ready to go out there and play center field even though I'm his backup, right? Shocker, that's actually a part of being successful in college baseball is just being a good teammate. And so many people don't even realize that the way we're treating youth baseball in terms of invite teams and taking stats at a young age and giving rewards based on those is like when baseball becomes hard for that athlete, they're not ready for it. A, because they aren't finding fun in baseball itself, right? I look back at this as a former coach, right? There's something fun about a fall day, early spring day when the weather turns and you're just on a baseball field. Just on a baseball field. That's it. Not going 3 for 4 on a baseball field, not punching out the side on a baseball field, not making a diving play on a baseball field, just being on the baseball field. There's something just that warms my heart being in that scenario. And I don't get to experience that scenario. We were at Penn State this past fall and it hit me like somebody who hadn't done a certain drug in a couple of years and being able to be out there and see that and feel that was intoxicating, basically, is what I'm trying to say. I don't get to see that as much, but that's a reward for baseball, right? Part of my love for baseball. Kids nowadays, when we're keeping track of stats the way we are and we're building reward system based on your performance, I don't think they feel that way. I think they feel the reward when they go 3 for 4. And it's easy when you're bet more athletic than everybody to go 3 for 4 every game, to go 2 for 4 every game, because you look at some of these high school stats, the Grady Emersons, the Jacob Lombards, these superstars in high school. It's like you're gonna get to draft day. It's like this kid hit 650 in high school baseball. Like, how do you even do that? That's how good the top of this sport is when you're in youth baseball. And then it's like, yeah, well, have fun hitting 260. Do you have the tools to do that? Whether that's in college, in professional baseball, or at any point in your career, there's going to be a point where you're going to have to be okay going 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts and feeling overmatched and feeling overwhelmed. Because at the end of the day, that is part, and still find fun in it, right? And that's the point that I'm trying to tie the bow on this, is still find fun in the fact that you're playing baseball. Still find a reward in playing baseball, even when you're 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts, even when you're struggling, even when you're not playing. Just finding joy and benefit out of being on the field on a day to day basis, right? All of those scenarios is something that we've lost to a certain extent. And I think it really impacts the confidence of baseball players and the mental skills and mental well being of baseball players in the long run. Is their reward system is structured in success, hits, diving plays, those factors. Because confidence at the end of the day isn't stable when you get to college baseball. It isn't stable when you get to high school baseball. When you're reaching the levels of facing competition that is similar to your own, facing talent level that is similar to your own, the reality is you are going to fail. You're going to fail. I can flat out guarantee that for every athlete, that at some point in their career, they are going to fall on their face, and baseball is going to feel like they are in quicksand going in one direction, and they can't get out. They're caught, they're trapped, they're heading down a complete rabbit hole and mentally spiraling, because that's baseball, right? And the results, when we're tied to the results, and when we're tied to the results of us going 3 for 3 makes us good, us going over 3 makes us bad, this game's going to chew you up and spit you out quick. And I've seen too many talented baseball players, pitchers and hitters alike, that have struggled with that reality right there. I'm not good because I struggled, results wise. I am good because I was successful, results wise, and legitimately will feel different week over week based on what they had done that given week. And it's such a hard thing, because I tie this back to the coaching side. Is like, coaches, when you make a lineup decision, what do you make your lineup decision based off of? Well, this kid's hitting 350 and this kid's hitting 150. Yeah, we are rewarded to play more based on our successes in the results, right? Everything in baseball is based on results. That's just the reality. We're not going to play if we don't perform. We're going to get more opportunities if we do perform, when our opportunities are presented to us. But that doesn't mean that our confidence should be tied to the results necessarily. And that's the main thing that, for athletes that struggle with the most, is getting them to avoid the fact of, talk to an athlete a couple weeks ago. And I just, it's like, man, I'm struggling. Okay. Well, what are you thinking about on Tuesday? He's like, Tuesday? Why does Tuesday matter? I pitch on Sundays. I go, that's your problem right there. I just circled your problem right there. You're not finding a way to get better on Tuesday without focusing on Sunday. So many times we're tied as athletes to the performance opportunities, to game time, to getting the opportunity to go out and compete, that we get tunnel focused, tunnel vision on that moment itself. And we don't even realize that the performance comes based off of our ability to do what needs to be done on Monday, to do what needs to be done on Tuesday, to do what needs to be done on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday alike, and then just go out there and be free. So many athletes circle either their last outing or their next outing and think that those are their only opportunities to feel better, to gain confidence, to gain performance opportunities. And the reality is that so many athletes lose every potential opportunity to grow because they're only focused on Sunday and Sunday, Sunday and Sunday. And then they think about Sunday on Monday. They think about their past Sunday on Monday, and they let that determine whether they're going to have a good day or a bad day, whether they're going to do what they're going to do, right? And they're not consistent in those decisions. And then they do the same thing on Tuesday. And then finally by Wednesday, we close the book and we start thinking about the next Sunday, how I'm going to perform, and I'm going to bring the energy, and I'm going to be better, and I'm going to fix this, and I'm going to fix that. And then we obsess over it. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed. Guess what happens when you get to Sunday? You're mentally exhausted to the extent that you're not even in a position to perform. because you've just spent all week exhausting yourself over circling this date on the calendar and thinking that was going to bring you everything that you ever needed because you had finally figured it out. The big thing is Sunday is just another day on the calendar. Oh, yes, is there a hitter in that box? Yes, is there a pitcher across the way? Yes, am I getting my opportunity to perform? Yeah, 100%. But the reality is that you handle that day for what it is. And what I always want athletes to do is to be free on that day, right? I've done so much leading up to this day that this is just, let's just go have fun. This is baseball. This is competition. I'm in a dogfight with somebody 60 feet, 6 inches away from me. And I'm going to bring everything I got. And if it doesn't go well, I'm going to go back to the drawing board next week and fix everything I can and build a plan to get better each and every day, right? And so many times we think Sunday is everything. It's game 7 of the World Series for these guys when in reality it's just a cage session indoors in the preseason. But they lose, their goals and their opportunities because they let that determine everything. Compared to if as an athlete, you then go, okay, Sunday's over. What can I do to get 1% better today on Monday? Okay, here's the 3 things I need to do. I need to do sprints, I need to lift, and I need to do my post throw day after rehab. Boom. Go do that with an intent to get better. Do that. Who cares if you didn't throw a strike on Sunday? Go do that. And then go figure out what you need to do Tuesday and go do that and crush that. And then figure out what you need to do Wednesday and go do that and crush that. And just focus on doing 3 to 5 things each and every day that are required and watch you blow past your potential, but also blow past the results that you're looking to get on Sunday. And then what you do when you get to Sunday is, man, I'm nervous. I've put in a lot of work. I'm nervous. I want to perform. Trick your brain into believing, not thinking, believing that you're going to have success because you put in the work Monday through Saturday. Believe that. Hey, man, it don't matter what happens out there. I'm putting in the work day to day. And even if this doesn't go well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do the same thing next week. And I'm going to do the same thing the week after. And I'm going to do the same thing the week after. And really, when it comes down to it, the most successful people consistently do that on a week to week basis. They look at Sunday and they see 6 opportunities to prepare themselves for that day. Athletes, young athletes, athletes that struggle with mental health, they see Sunday. That's all they see. It doesn't matter what they have to do on Monday. Show up to practice. Coach is making me throw. I have to long toss. Ugh. I just want to get to Sunday because I just want to perform. You ain't going to make it very long doing that. And even if you get through college baseball doing that, professional baseball is going to chew you up and spit you out. At some point in your career, it's going to chew you up and spit you out. Because if you're only focused on Sunday and you're not even looking at Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday as an opportunity to get better, as an opportunity to prepare yourself to dominate on Sunday, you've just lost everything. And again, it seems so simpleton. And even as I say this, man, nobody's going to resonate with this. You'd be shocked. Shocked if you just, as a coach, have a conversation with an athlete who really feels like he's riding the roller coaster. Hey, man, you ever thought about this? What are you thinking about on Tuesday? I'm thinking about performing, man. I'm thinking about getting better, performing, helping the team win. Dude, you're not getting better on Tuesday. How do you think you're going to help our team win on Sunday? You're getting worse because you're not focused on what's important now, right? Trust me. You might think that everybody understands. Well, that's 1% better. Kaizen, as we like to call it. Get 1% better. Incremental gains. All of those things. It's a lot harder than you think. And a lot less athletes do it. A lot less athletes do it. So as we wrap up here, 44 minutes, I tend to get a little bit long in terms of talking about mental skills, especially because it's something I'm so passionate about and can be unorganized, but I hope each and every person listening to it, especially up to this point, feels like it was authentic because that's how I like to talk about these things. And I tend to be a little bit unorganized compared to somebody who's typically organized when we structure a podcast, but a little bit unorganized when it comes to that stuff. And a couple of things that I want to make sure we tie the bow on. Athletes don't think this is optional, right? And I'm not saying that you got to sign up for a Michael Huber. You got to call me. You got to, do your own research and start to be a wizard in this. The core foundations of mental skills is going to help you years and years and years in advance. Start as young as possible. Start understanding I need to get better today. If I want to perform on Sunday, I need to get better today. My results, my successes and failures aren't tied to being 3 for 3 versus 0 for 3, right? All of those things that we can hit on, my confidence, my belief in my own abilities aren't tied to the results of what I've been over the course of a season, right? All of those things, these aren't optional for any athlete. Even if you're not struggling right now, it's still not optional for you. If you're a coach and you have athletes that you know for a fact don't make it optional, right? Have these conversations, make these guys think, make these guys address any of the small things that might be impactful, and being able to build these foundational tools. The other thing, and it ties into this, these aren't fixes. We need to stop viewing mental skills and sports psychology as a fix. It's preventative measures. So even if you're somebody who feels unbelievably confident each and every day you step in that box, build these out as preventative measures because it's gonna happen. The best athletes at handling this built this foundation before they needed it, right? Think about that. The best athletes build the foundation of mental skills before they need it. Stop waiting till you need it to go seek out mental skills training in any way. And again, this doesn't have to be paid consultant based training, coaching based training. Do your research, read a book, listen to a podcast, listen to somebody on YouTube, go listen to any professional athlete talk about their habits and those types of things. There's so many free resources that will have these conversations where if you can't afford to go get a mental performance coach, then don't. Go find it for free and sink your teeth into 10 minutes a day. Start doing some meditation, start doing some visualization, viewing yourself positively, reframe your thoughts to be more positive than negative. These little things that you can find in 2 seconds, 2 seconds on YouTube, 2 seconds with the resources we have, 2 seconds, and get you better. Don't be reactive. Don't wait till you're struggling. Don't. Make sure you prevent the inevitable struggles that come from baseball. That'll do for this episode. So many different avenues we could go down. So many different avenues that I want to go down. So many different ways we can handle this conversation moving forward. But 48 minutes in, I feel like that's a good foundational conversation about sports psychology. We'll talk about deeper and deeper things as we continue to go. If I continue to go solo on any podcast, we'll make sure we stay in the sports psychology realm. You know, we can talk about things like mechanical focus, exit velocity focus, and what the facility world and technology world is doing to our mental skills and our specific focuses when it comes on game time. But so many different avenues we can go. If you're still listening, smash that subscribe button. Reach out if you have any topics you want us to discuss, questions, Q&A, whether it's me, whether it's Dan, whether it's anybody we can bring in our expertises of the different avenues of player development in baseball. We can try our best, but we'd love to open it up to some of our listeners that are loyal enough, and especially if they're sticking around this deep into the conversation, then 100% you should reach out and let us know what you think. So that'll do for this episode of the Baseball Development Hub podcast.